Yes, good morning, Biafrans, good morning, Nigerians, good morning, global citizens all over the world. You're welcome again to our Thursday Tonic, the Mobbing Media International. And today, we are going to continue from where we stopped. And one of the best ways to continue is to really know how did we get here? How did we get to this place where we are? We are discussing Nigeria. We are discussing politics. We are discussing the Biafran struggle. And we are discussing the legitimization of that struggle. We are discussing the capacity to make sure that what we are doing, we have the ability, the capacity, and the capability to get it done and do it well. And so if we have to discuss Nigeria, Biafra, and sundry matters, then it is important for us, since we are discussing politics, for us to find out so that we know where we are anchoring our discussion from. You know, we call ourselves Movement of Biafrans in Nigeria, the political educators. Our job is to educate people. Unfortunately for us, these things that we discuss here, you will need to go back and read. You think I just come here to talk. I've been doing this research for 25 years. So it's not, when you listen to a 30 minutes broadcast, you think that's all it provides. No, you will also need to go and do research. Biafrans are intellectually minded people. Biafrans are brilliant people. If we gave the world the father of the internet, if they gave Philip Emeagwari, if we gave the world the father of African literature, the late Professor Chinua Achebe, if we gave the world, the Nigeria, the first vice chancellor of the University of Ibadan, University College, Ibadan, Professor Kenneth Onwuka Dike, K.O. Dike, the historian, if we gave the world those people, then it becomes imperative that you also do some more research after listening to us. And so this morning we want to really look at how did Nigeria come into being as a political entity? How did we get here? Because we are discussing about how Biafrans will be free, either within Nigeria or outside the Nigerian state. That is autonomy or independence. And interestingly, that was how Nigeria started as an independent country. We started with autonomous units. So it is important so that when you get that foundation laid, then you will be able to understand why we are discussing the things that we are discussing. History is very critical. If you don't know the historical, then you will never know the liberating, because it is from history that you can get yourself liberated. Whatever you know today was what was known before. And so I need to bring some people, not everybody, some people in line with our discussion. Nigeria as a political unit. How did we get involved in this political unit called Nigeria that now resulted that we need to liberate ourselves, either within it or outside it? It's very critical. We need to understand that. First of all the people we see today, all the ethnic nationalities within the Nigerian state, they were existing on their own before the white people came. And of course, those who know a little history, who did a little history, even in secondary school, will remember that in 1861, Lagos became a British colony when King Dosumu was exiled by the British, and the British annexed. And that annexing did not take place until the infamous Berlin Conference of 1884-85 in Germany, when all the great powers, the Time magazine then called it the scramble for Africa. That was the heading, the scramble for Africa in 1884-85, because they were coming into this climb, coming to Africa to do business. They were doing trading. They were doing all manner of they were relating. But over time, they began to have problems. At the high sea, the British with the Portuguese, with the Dutch, and all the other people, they began to have with the French and several other, they began to have issues. So they said, look, instead of fighting ourselves over this innocent land, or this vast land we have acquired. I remember the first High Commissioner of the Protectorate of Kenya. His name is Elliot. I've forgotten his surname now. But he made a statement. He said, we have found in East Africa the rare opportunity of dealing with a tabula rasa, a vast and expensive piece of land where we can do as we please. Did you hear that? A tabula rasa. A tabula rasa is Greek. It means a clean waxing slate, something that nothing is written on top. It comes from John Locke, the British philosopher called John Locke, who says that the human mind was a tabula rasa, that it was experience that began to write on the human mind. So this Elliot man said that in East Africa they have found a tabula rasa, a vast and expansive piece of land where they can do as they please. One of the very big anthropologists said that there is nothing in Africa except the history of the Europeans in her territory. The rest is darkness, and darkness is not a subject of history. That was their perception of us. So they went to Berlin in 1884-85 and decided to partition Africa. I mean, we were just sitting down here. The Hausas were sitting down with the North. By then, the Fulanis, well, yeah, they have arrived then 1804. That's when Ottoman Danfodio came. The Hausa Fulani were up there in the north. The Yorubas were in the west. We were here in the east, the Igbos. The other people were there in the south, the Ijaws, well, they call them the Zos, that's the proper thing. The Zos, the Shekiris, the Robos, and the Benis, Edos, they were all there. You remember the Benin Empire, the Oyo Empire, the Kanem Boronu Empire. We had a very massive democratic structure in Igbo land here. The last king that they exiled, the last democratic king in Igbo land, Eze Obarike, that they had to exile because the British came here and they saw a structure that was near perfect, almost better than the British Empire. And so when they went, they now decided to, we were sitting down here, they said, okay, British, take so and so place. You French, take the other one. Portuguese, take Angola and all this other side in Mozambique. Dutch, take so and so place. So they partitioned Africa in 1884-85. And then in 1861, Lagos became a British colony. By 1900, of course, you remember the Royal Niger Company, led by Tubman William Goldie. He practically sold the Nigerian Empire to the British for £860,000 because they were just doing trading. And now they wanted to take political control of the territory. And so from there to 1912, that's where I'm going to start. I want to start from 1912 because that's where we became yoked. You see, as a preacher, I don't believe that nation states are created by God. No. Nationalities can be created by God. In the Igbos, the French, the Scots, the Yorubas, the Ashantis in Ghana, the Bugandas in Uganda. They can be created by God. But if you must have a deliberate nation state, it has to be the creation of the people. The people have to agree. When I finish laying this foundation, I will go and give you an example of the United States so that you see how nation states come into existence. And so from 1900, when the British collected the Nigerian estate from the Royal Niger Company, they began to administer separately. The Southern Protectorate was here and the Northern Protectorate was there, up north. And then in 1912, they began to think about what they call amalgamation, to join. Now, it's very critical. I need to explain this word, amalgamation. If you do a little bit of chemistry, you will know that to amalgamate, an amalgam is not a compound. If elements come together to form a compound, their identities disappear. But if they come together to form an amalgam, they retain their identities. So the British they were sure of what they were doing. They knew Nigeria is an amalgam, not a compound. So they said they had to amalgamate it. And then came that infamous quote given by Lord Vernon Lewis Harcourt, the one we named Port Harcourt after. He was Secretary of State for the colonies. In 1912, he made this statement, and I want you to listen very carefully. He said, "We have released northern Nigeria from the lending string of the treasury. A good and well-cultured youth is now ready to effect an alliance with a southern lady of means." Well-cultured youth, that is the north, is now ready to effect an alliance with a southern lady of means. That was southern Nigeria. I have issued this license, and Lord Frederick Lugard will perform the ceremony. I pray that the country will prosper or something. I can't remember the last part of that quote, but he was wishing that we will prosper. Now, that was 1912. By then, women don't vote in England. Women began to vote in England in 1920. So already the British had already designed southern Nigeria as a lady of means, as a wife to the north. When women were not given any serious, they were just people who warm beds, people who share, who cook food, hew the wood, and all stuff. Women had no franchise. That was 8 years before. So you can imagine their thinking was that these people they are just wife to the youth, to the north. So that was where we began. Now, by 1914, January 1, I read the statement made, and he started by saying, His Majesty the King. Now, His Majesty the King has decided, I don't want to give you the other ones. His Majesty the King here is one man called King George V of England. He sat down far away in Buckingham Palace and decided that Joseph Agbo's great-great-great-grandfather and the great-grandfather of Haruna Mohammed up north and the great-great-grandfather of Oluwole Eno, somewhere in Calabar or in the Efik region, and Agbo in Benin will have to be one country, whether they like it or yes, whether they like it or not. That was, he said, His Majesty has decided that as from today, the territory, and he began to name it from the southern Cameroon to that will become one country by the name Nigeria. That's what brought us here. And of course, Lord Lugard. I read a book written by A.R.M. Green. The book is titled The Amalgamation of Nigeria. And I remember Kid Green said in page 272 of that book, he said, the basic principle, I'm quoting now, he said the basic principle responsible for the successful working of the Nigerian system are ignorance, fear, and military terrorism, unquote. That was, according to him, that was how Nigeria began. The principle for the successful working of the Nigerian system: fear, ignorance, and military terrorism. Biafrans all over the world. Movement of Biafrans in Nigeria, we are asking you, have these three principles left Nigeria? Fear, ignorance, and military terrorism. Has Nigeria not been sustained by fear? Fear of the unknown. Fear by even the political leaders who are afraid, they don't know what is going to happen to Nigeria if Nigeria disintegrates, as if there is something sacrosanct about Nigeria. I want Nigeria to survive, but Nigeria doesn't have to survive. I would rather have Oluwole, Haruna, Nemeka, Eno, Agbo. I would rather have them survive than have one man called Nigeria, whom I don't know what he eats. I don't know the dress he wears. I don't know where he lives. That man called Nigeria should not survive at the expense of the rest that I just named. So I would rather have real human beings in flesh and blood. I would rather have Emeka Emekesri survive. I would rather have and Eberechukwu and Igbo survive. I would rather have Femi Adesina survive than to have a man, one man that is called Nigeria. I don't know his color. I don't know where he lives. So this is how we have brought ourselves. Fear has not left us. A lot of us are still ignorant. That is why somebody will wake up in the morning and said, I don't want the political. And you think you are going to survive without the political. Outside God, the next thing is the political. Military terrorism. Has it left us? Operation Snake Dance. I told them when they started, I said, they don't even know that Python doesn't dance. It's Cobra that dances. So that is still part of the ignorance. Python doesn't dance. It's Cobra that dances. So when you say Python dance, it is a contradiction in terms, because Python doesn't dance. And so these three things still have remained in the Nigerian state. That is the nature of the Nigerian state. And we began to have constitutional developments from Clifford to Richards to Littleton. We are going to be discussing constitution in this series as we proceed. But I just want to move there to the independent constitution of 1960. Now, Nigerians knew that Nigeria has to either survive as a federation or it will not survive. Because that is the only way to keep a people with religious, cultural, linguistic diversities together. So between 1950 and 1959, a space of 10 years, the then Nigerian leaders, the founding fathers, I still find it difficult to really call them founding fathers. I don't know what they have found. Because at the end of the day, you look at the structure that we have. But they tried then because they knew the Awolowos of this world, the Nnamdi Azikiwes of this world, the Ahmadu Bellos of this world, the Herbert Macaulays of the Tafawa Balewa. They knew that the Nigerian state, if it has to survive at all, will survive as a federation. And so, between 10 years, they worked very hard to have what we call the Federal Republic of Nigeria. By 1960, there were 4 constitutions in Nigeria. 1 federal constitution and 3 regional constitutions. A constitution for northern region, a constitution for western region, and a constitution for eastern region. And then in 1963, there was a demonstration by the Midwest. They said the big tribes are swallowing them up, and that they need to have their own separate region. There was a demonstration. And as a result of that demonstration, the then Prime Minister, Alhaji Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, appointed a Briton called Edward Longe to run what they call a referendum at the Midwestern Nigeria to determine whether they should have their region. That referendum took place on July 13, 1963, and overwhelming 89-point-something% voted for the creation of the Midwestern region. And when that was created, they took it to the parliament and they passed it. That was the only region created up there when the civilians at independence rather. And so by October 1, the Republican Constitution came into operation. By October 1, 1963, we had 5 constitutions, 1 federal constitution and 4 regional constitutions. That was how Nigeria began. And every region was taking charge of what is in their territory and paying tax to the center. That was how Nigeria began. But I need to remind you of something that happened on October 11, 1960. Just 11 days after Nigeria's independence. The then Premier of Northern Nigeria made a statement, Sir Ahmadu Bello. He said, and I quote, "The new nation called Nigeria," listen, "the new nation called Nigeria should be an estate of our great-grandfather, Ottoman Danfodio. We must ruthlessly prevent any change of power. We use the minority in the north as willing tools and the south as a conquered territory. We will never allow them to rule over us. We will never allow them to have control over their future," unquote. That Nigeria, the one that we are living now, is an estate of Ottoman Danfodio. Are you surprised at what is happening within the Nigerian state? General Olusegun Aremu Obasanjo has been talking about Fulanization and Islamization. This was the agenda that has been executed since 1960. I remember that in 1942, even before independence, before Nigeria became independence, the West African Students' Union went to the emirs in the north to support constitutional reform. And they said something. When they finished, they issued a communique that states, and I quote, "Holding this country together is not possible except by the religion of the prophets. If they want political unity, let them follow our religion," unquote. And in 1944, Sir Ahmadu Bello, the Sultan of Sokoto said, all these, I quote, "all these Sultanas that desire a united Nigeria must first accept Islam as their religion." That was 1944. Then in 1948, the man who was to become the prime minister, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, after a budget defense at the Nigerian Legislative Council in 1948, Abubakar Tafawa Balewa made a statement. I don't know how that kind of person will become prime minister 12 years after. What type of thing will he be thinking? He said, all of you who think that Nigeria is one country, this is wrong, especially you press people. Nigeria's unity is only a British intention for the country. And all these Southerners that are pouring into the north do not mix with the Northerners. And we, the Northerners, do not mix with them. In fact, we regard them as invaders. Nigerian unity ends outside these chambers, unquote. 1948. 12 years later, the same man is prime minister. What do you think will be happening? The current president of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, had stated very clearly on August 27, 2001, that, I quote, "I must continue to show inside me and outside me a support for the Sharia movement that is sweeping all over the country. Allah willing, we will not stop until we have the total implementation of Sharia all over the country," unquote. It is available on record. So when that person becomes president, what do you think he will think? What do you think he will say? What do you think he will do? Because it's no longer about what they say, it's about what they do. They say all manner of things, but what do they do? The truth is, this is how the Nigerian state came into being. And then we were managing it. That was why they rigged the election. If you go and study very well, you will see that they rigged the election of 1959 before independence. It was totally rigged in the favor of the husband, the North, the Northern People's Congress. It was rigged in their place. I remember I saw in 1964 a manifesto of the Northern People's Congress, a manifesto for an election, and it states, part of it states, "Time has come," I'm quoting him, "time has come. We must show these intellectual fools." Intellectual fools. We must show these intellectual fools that we are only in the morning of our leadership of this country. Our only obstacle are the Igbos. They have overplayed their card. They will sink, unquote. This is the structure of the Nigerian state as presently constituted. And this is why there will be so much to discuss, so plenty of things to say. But this is the character of the Nigerian state that the Biafrans are asking for a return. We began as a federation, running our own affairs. Or they allow us to have an independent country, just like we had in 1967, when they forced us out of Nigeria that we founded. And so, there is usually no time when I am on this platform, but I'm sure we are going to continue next week. And there is no problem if you want more, because I told you, you need to read stuff, you need to read documents. You can send me an email, you can call me on phone. All you need to do is to get the correct information. If you are not properly informed, you will be deformed. Have a great day. My name is Evangelist Joseph Dr. Nnemeka Agbo, Director, Political Education and Governance, movement of Biafrans in Nigeria. Teacher of philosophy, Ebonyi State University. You can reach me on jokoagbo@gmail.com. Jeoco agbo@gmail.com. And send me mails so that we can continue this lecture. God bless you.